Since a few weeks ago, our reality has been dominated by one single word, and we all know which word that is. But when you think about it, only 2 months ago, there was another word that was dominating everything. Dear friends, Brexit was supposed to happen 1 year ago, to be exact, on the 29th of March 2019 at 11 p.m. Of course, it happened 2 months ago, but I want to take you back to 1 year ago. Many in the United Kingdom believed it was going to happen. I wonder how many of you that are following us online believe that. Now, many of you probably doubted it was going to happen. So please leave your comments below and be honest. Now, this is a sermon about doubt. Honestly, we don't discuss it much in church, is it? It's not our favorite subject. I find this very fascinating because there are whole books in the Bible that deal with the issue of doubt in various ways. For instance, the book of Job, Ecclesiastes, Lamentations, and Habakkuk. Now, many of the Psalms touch on the theme of doubt and of feeling abandoned by God. Now, I, for one, have many questions and sometimes doubts, and I'm a minister. Now, I don't always have answers for these questions. To be honest, I'm not really entirely sure whether a person can be a Christian and never experience doubts every now and then. Now, faith, I think, requires sometimes doubt in order to get stronger, to be stronger faith. But if any of you ever arrive at a place where all your doubts are gone and all your questions are answered, take a deep breath and relax. Actually, you might as well take a harp and sing, because you, my friends, have arrived in heaven. Now, I do know one person who never doubts anything. You know, she has absolutely no doubts, and that's my 4-year-old daughter, Albulena. She says consistently to me, "Daddy, you are old." Now, I tried different techniques, to change her mind, to create the illusion that I'm not really that old. But the answer always is, "Papa, du bist alt." Daddy, you are old. Dear friends, as adults, we all doubt from time to time. It's a part of life, and we don't need to be so uptight about it. Some claim that doubt may actually prove to be a catalyst to further spiritual growth. Having said that, biblical writers do warn us about doubt and the risks involved. It is therefore very important to clarify what we perceive or categorize as doubt. And there are 3 main categories of doubt, and they are excellently summarized and explained by Dr. Ray Pritchett in his book, "Why Did This Happen to Me?" Now, Dr. Pritchett explains that firstly, there are intellectual doubts. Now, these are doubts most often raised by those outside of the church, outside of the Christian faith. Is the Bible really the Word of God? They are really type of questions. Is Jesus really the Son of God? Can we really rely on those manuscripts? Did Jesus really rise from the dead? These are the kind of doubts typically raised by individuals behind books such as the Da Vinci Code or the so-called the Gospel according to Judas. Also, as we all know, intellectual doubts are promoted by the new atheist movement, who are pretty much fundamentalists. They are called differently the 4 horsemen: Dawkins, Harris, Dennett, and the late Hitchens. Now, these are doubts filled with such utter skepticism, and unfortunately, intellectual doubters are not really open for dialogue. Secondly, according to Dr. Pritchard, there are the spiritual doubts. Now, these tend to be doubts of those inside the church. This category covers those, especially born in the church, second, third, fourth, or in my wife's case, fifth generation Adventist Christians, or just Christians in general. Typical questions involve, I've been an Adventist all my life, but am I really a converted Christian? Have I truly believed, or was it the inertia from my parents? Why is it so hard to pray sometimes? Why do I still feel guilty? Why is it taking me so long to get better spiritually? Now, the third category, we have circumstantial doubts. Now, this is the largest category because it covers all the whys of life. It's either a why or where was God when kind of question. So these are often very personal, very private. They derive from very painful personal experiences. Why did my marriage break up? Why can't I find a decent partner to marry? Why did my best friend betray me? Why did my child leave the church? Where was God during those brutal communist years? For instance, in my country, Albania. Where is God now that the coronavirus pandemic is torturing the entire world? Why do we have to close our churches? So you get the idea. Now, according to Dr. Pritchard, these are the questions we meet at the intersection of biblical faith and the pain of living in a fallen world. It seems these are the toughest doubts around. Now, unfortunately, the tendency is for us not to address them, but rather sweep them under the rug. What is worse, we don't often treat generously those in the church who struggle with such issues, and this is something to be embarrassed about. It's very important, dear friends, when we refuse to process or deal with the circumstantial doubts, sooner or later they will become spiritual doubts, and logically, when we don't even confront those spiritual doubts, then they will eventually become intellectual doubts. And that is the moment when people stop attending church permanently or leave the Christian faith altogether. And that would be very, very sad. Now, just like there are three categories for doubt, there are three myths about what we need to deconstruct about doubt. So let's find out what they are. Myth number one. Now, many people think that doubt is the opposite of faith. But it isn't. So there you have the first fake news. Unbelief is the opposite of faith, not doubt. It reminds me of a famous quote by the German-American theologian and philosopher, Paul Johannes Tillich, and he said, doubt isn't the opposite of faith. It is an element of faith. But what is unbelief? Now, unbelief refers to a willful refusal to believe, while doubt refers to an inner uncertainty. So please never forget, always share your uncertainties, your insecurities, your dilemmas, and life questions with God. He longs to have a meaningful conversation with you. Myth number two. Now, many people, and this is a common phenomenon in Adventism, they think that doubt is kind of unforgivable. But it isn't. So again, fake news. God doesn't condemn us when we question Him. Scriptures make this very, very clear. Now, for instance, both Job and David repeatedly questioned God, but they were never punished for it. Actually, God addressed their doubts. So this is something for you to never forget. God is big enough to handle all of our doubts and all of our life questions. And myth number 3, many people think that when we struggle with God, it automatically means that we lack faith or we are of weak faith. Again, fake news. To the contrary, struggling with God is often a guaranteed sign that we truly have faith. We're just going to the next deeper level. Now, I can think of numerous biblical characters, patriarchs like Abraham or Jacob, who even did this literally, and others, which leads me to plead with you once again to please never forget, if we never struggle, our faith will never grow. Embrace the struggles when they come, and you will come up stronger in faith. Now, I don't know about you, but I happen to be an adult who finds it hard to keep believing all the time, incessantly. It wasn't always this way. I am a first-generation Adventist. I was converted at the age of 16. For many years after my conversion, I didn't recall any issues that I had with faith or doubt, because my faith was fine. There was never an issue. Nowadays, I often find myself envying the younger version of myself. But let me share you my personal experience of the past 4 years or so, since I moved to Germany. Now, for over 2 decades before that, I was very intensely involved with the work of the church in Albania, as a senior pastor, church planter, mission administrator, you name it. But then in 2016, I took a 1-year sabbatical that ended up a bit longer. Now, it was okay to rest for a little bit, but then I began to struggle. I started having circumstantial doubts. Obviously, I missed working as a pastor, so the whys came rolling in. If God called me to ministry, and here I am, why am I not getting a call from the conference? Why this? And why that? And I was obviously frustrated, because in my mind, I was ready to work for Him. And the frustration continued until one day when I was confronted by these 2 verses in John chapter 6, 28 and 29. Now, when the disciples asked Jesus, "What must we do, Master, to do the work that God requires?" Jesus answered, "The work of God is this, to believe in the one He has sent." Now, if we open our biblical commentaries and dictionaries, the original Greek word for work means serious toil, serious labor. Now, Jesus is saying here that it requires serious work to keep believing. Well, now I realize that finding it hard to keep believing does not mean that I don't believe. It means that believing is sometimes a difficult activity that I have to go through. In many ways, it's like going to the gym. It isn't really fun, is it? But you do reap the benefits later on because of the disciplined exercise. Now, talking about exercise, I have one question for all of you. Have you ever seen a jogger smile? You haven't, have you? I know you're being honest now. So, let there never be any doubt about this. The answer is no, never. You will never see somebody who is both jogging and smiling. Now, the non-smiling bit doesn't bother the joggers though. They know they will smile in the long run. Now, Jesus says that it requires serious work to believe and to keep believing. So now I get it. Finding it hard to keep believing does not mean that I don't believe. It means that believing is often a difficult yet rewarding activity that I have to go through. Like marriage. Now, this past Tuesday, Trixie and I celebrated 15 years of marriage. Now, that means 15 years of daily jogging and going to the gym. And no wonder I feel so fit and slim right now. Now, friends, for some people, believing comes easy. They don't seem to have many doubts. Now I say, how wonderful for them. But some others are on the other extreme. They don't want to give faith or believing a genuine chance. So I say, how very sad for them. But the clear majority of us are in the middle. And what seems to be our everyday challenge is facing doubts, but working hard to give faith a chance. This leads me to say that we shouldn't feel bad if our experience is not that fantastic as somebody else's. It is actually a comforting thought to realize that when it comes to struggling with doubts, most of us are on the same boat. Yes, we are in this together. Although we're not in the same situations and our faith experiences are not the same, nor must they be. But as we noticed earlier, many Christians do struggle with doubt and then feel guilty. It is to those believers that my words are now directed. Now, we need a biblical perspective to process this. So I suggest we focus on one person who doubted and how Jesus dealt with that doubt. Now, did I say a man who doubted? So let me ask you directly, who was it that doubted Jesus? The answer might shock you. We're going to take a non-commercial break.